So the revolt started in 66 CE, and it was really, the basis of it was really over the anti-taxation protests. So the Jews were being controlled and ruled by the Romans, and anybody who was ruled by the Romans had to pay tax to the Roman Empire. So the money had to go to Italy. Well, the Jews had been paying for 500 years to the Jewish temple. And so they were doing that with Syrian shekels of Tyre. And it was actually a half shekel. Any male of any family that was at least 20 years or older had to pay a half shekel to the temple every year.
Wow.
And so you can imagine how much money after 500 years built up into the temple. And so, of course, the Jews had no interest in paying the Romans. They saw their allegiance to the temple, to their
community,
Jewish ways.
Sure.
When they refused, there was the governor at the time. He sacked the temple, did some damage, and imprisoned some important Jewish officials. And then that started a huge rebellion. And then there was the Battle of Beth Horon, where 6,000 Romans were massacred. And then the Jews set up a government, and they started to issue silver coins from the Jewish temple. And so they were actually taking Syrian tetragrams, melting them down, and striking these shekels. In year one, they only did silver, and then year 2 and 3, they started doing bronze coins. And then Vespasian, as I mentioned before, with the Judea Capta, was sent in by Nero to quash the rebellion. And then later on, Nero died, and Vespasian was called back to Rome, become emperor, and his son Titus kind of cleaned it up.
Well, he had to go make his name.
Yeah, and in 70 CE, he destroyed and burned Jerusalem, sacked the Jewish temple, took all of the money out of the temple, and I've brought this up before, brought it back to Rome, and they eventually built the Colosseum with that money. And the war actually ended a little bit later than 70 with a small faction that ended up in the mountains called Masada. And I've been there. I went there when I was 18 years old, and basically this legion was up there, this group was up there, and the Romans basically starved them out until they all died because there was no way to get food up there. And so it's right near the Dead Sea. And in fact, if you ever go to Israel, you can do the Dead Sea and Masada in the same trip. They're right next to each other. It's a very interesting place. But the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, and it's really the second temple, because the first temple was destroyed long before, but then this temple stood for 586 years. So 586 years of putting all this money in there, and then the Romans kind of broke that all up.